Okay, welcome everybody to the second session of today. Today is extra exciting because we have two lecturers joining us today. They're from Deloitte, one from Team South Africa and one from the Netherlands. We have Jelene Kombrink and Gijs van Zuilen. So Jelene is a cyber strategy senior manager at Africa Talent by Deloitte in South Africa. Her field of experiences are in audit, fraud, cybersecurity, and cyber operational resilience within the financial services industry, both in South Africa and the Netherlands. And then we have Gijs van Zuilen. He is an IT audit and assurance manager working at Deloitte here in the Netherlands. His fields of expertise are for control testing, cyber and audit and quality assurance, predominantly in the energy, resources and industrials industry. So welcome both of you. And I would say take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session. Sure, we have an audience spread across South Africa as well as the Netherlands. So welcome. Gijs, are you going to, is it currently presented, the slides? Yeah, perfect.
Oh my God.
So we're going to take you guys through today on controls to continuity. We call it continuity, although you will see throughout the discussion today, it will be also resilience. But while resilience is a big topic at the moment, we thought it's better to say controls to continuity. So if you can go to the next slide. Just a very quick agenda around, of course, we've already had the introduction, so we will skip that, but we will take you through cyber resilience, the NIST 2.0 CSF correlation to resilience, assessment for resilience, and then we will close with the questions and answers for that you can ask anything. So Gijs, if you can just move past introduction to cyber resilience. Next slide. Perfect. So resilience. Maybe a small caveat to the word resilience. It can mean various things, anything from cyber, operational, digital resilience. So what we want to talk to today is resilience from a cyber perspective. So what is resilience? An organization's ability to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from disruptions in the event of threats while maintaining its critical operations and services. We've provided a few examples so that you can see resilience is not just something that came from certain regulations, for example, the Digital and Operational Resilience, DORA in short, regulation that is in Europe, but also it can span multiple industries. So on the second from the right, you'll see healthcare, of course, financial services, energy. These are all areas that had breaches that had quite a high impact, financial impact on them. CrowdStrike, since this is from a cyber perspective, the losses that were estimated on the outages of CrowdStrike was in the billions. Marks and Spencer, UK-based company in the retail space, they had around 300 million pounds that cost their outages for them. So you will say outages, what does that have to do with resilience? When there's outages, the business stop. Depends on the type of outages. It can have an impact on resilience. If you look at the total on the right-hand side with DBS Singapore, there were the executives had a pay cut because of outages. So there's reputational risk. There's multiple implications from a resilience and critical operation and services perspective. Next slide. So why all of a sudden is there a big focus on cyber resilience? So Threat landscape, as you know, it doesn't remain stagnant. It keeps changing. It's modernized, AI-driven ransomware, especially with the AI, it's becoming more sophisticated. We also see with supply chain attacks, they breach the weakest link in your supply chain. We can talk anything from third parties, fourth parties, or even fifth parties, where they might have weaknesses and still gain a foothold from an attack perspective within an organization. Regulation, I've already mentioned the Digital Operational Resilience Act, DORA, where from a regulatory point of view, there's more rigor being placed on organizations to prove their resilience, prove that they can withstand a critical attack, and their businesses, the critical main businesses can remain in operation. Responding and recovering to those events become even more critical if you want to look at being more resilient. I already mentioned and showed some of the financial losses, but before I get to the financial losses, it's not just about the cost. It's not just about the loss that you can have financially. There's business interruption. When there's business interruption, you have by default, you will have financial cost implications. By having a business being interrupted, and it's your critical processes that lead not just to financial losses, which is the last point, but it also can have severe reputational damages and even ultimately can lead to closing the organization. So why is it now important? It's important to prioritize your cyber resilience, prioritize the controls that will support those support the organization to become more resilient. You will never be able to say, if I have all my controls in place, that I will be so resilient, nothing will happen. That unfortunately doesn't happen. It's minimizing the impact on your resilience. Next slide. So I've already said resilience can be cyber, operational, digital, human resilience. There's multiple aspects to cyber resilience. So we want to touch on 14 dimensions that will support organizations to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, and recover with resilience in mind. We've got governance structure. That's everything to do with the roles, responsibilities, leadership, the senior leadership, board level, where they need to take responsibility for resilience, for their cyber, make sure within their decision making it is top of mind. People and culture, having a cyber aware culture. I think one can add cyber and resilience aware culture that helps by doing whatever you need to do as your daily activities, making sure you always have cyber resilience and the implications it can have on the continuity of the business. Supply chain, we see that becoming a very high focus with a lot of organizations. And again, this is not don't think of resilience as DORA, i.e. it's purely in the financial industry. This is across industries. All industries are exposed to cyber attacks. All industries have a concern around resilience. So from a supply chain perspective, already mentioned in the beginning around third parties, fourth parties, and it can go down to fifth and so forth. Have the right visibility around your third parties, what services they are providing. We'll see a bit later how supply chain is not just something on its own, a dimension on its own, but it's spread across almost all these dimensions. And I'll explain that a little bit later. Asset management is everything to do with what services, asset material, technology you have on in your environment. How do you classify those? What are deemed critical and important functions? What are deemed the most critical services that if they go down, you literally should have a few hours to bring it back up. You cannot afford days and days before they are back up. So, back up and running. So, from an asset management perspective, the classification and the identification of those assets are quite important. Risk identification, your normal risk assessment, make sure it's span the risk assessment of your suppliers. How do you then track those risks, your residual risk, after the controls that are in place are being taken into account? Security testing, everything from penetration testing, red team testing, anything that can help you to identify what weaknesses you have in your environment, what controls aren't working as intended. Awareness, ongoing training, simulations with your staff, making sure if you want to have a security aware culture, you need to make sure you regularly provide the right awareness and training. Technology infrastructure is how do you protect your environment? Having a secure, resilient architecture, identify very quickly when something has gone wrong, but be able to protect it. And as we would say, to how do you then protect the blast radius if there is an attack happening? Incident detection. Um, you want to be able to identify when an attacker is in your environment in a very quick turnaround time, be able to then contain it. So again, you can minimize the blast radius. Again, you cannot always stop attackers from entering your environment through whatever mechanism. What you hopefully need to do is identify it as soon as possible, contain it, and prevent that lateral movement, and also help making sure the organization remain as resilient as possible. Monitoring, reporting, again, just visibility on what's going on in your environment, where attackers might be. Incident response, how do you respond when something has gone wrong? Usually, you need to have playbooks. How quickly do you mobilize your team members when an incident has occurred? Business continuity, crisis preparedness, again, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. How prepared are you? What scenarios have you identified that equate a crisis for your organization? What are the critical systems and services that you need to protect within a very short period of time? That can only be defined if you are well aware of the crisis scenarios you need to make sure you protect your organization against. Compliance, internal assurance, having the right visibility around how compliant are you with all the regulations, but also how which controls are indeed in place, and how do you have that assurance? And then just from a final assurance is that independent testing and review. And we will talk a bit more about assurance at a later stage. Next slide, and then I'll also want to hand over to Gijs.
Thank you, Helene. So in the next section, we are going to talk about NIST2, the cybersecurity framework and the correlation to resilience. Next one. So what is NIST cybersecurity framework 2.0? It's the latest version of the NIST, the cybersecurity framework, and is used to assess organizational cybersecurity maturity in order to support the management with the reduction and communication of cybersecurity risks. So it got released, the 2.0 version, in 2024, and before that there was also a 1.0 version and a 1.1 version, FYI. So what are the key advantages of this framework? It's designed to be scalable, flexible, and applicable to organizations across various industries. That's really good to remember. Furthermore, it also guides organizations in order to manage cybersecurity risks, which have been widely adopted both voluntarily as well as through mandates worldwide. So with regards to the insights and adaptability of the NIST framework, one of the key advantages is that the maturity of an organization with regards to cybersecurity management can be assessed. So it provides basically a maturity assessment framework. So the cybersecurity framework consists of both functions, categories, and subcategories. Zooming in on the functions, you do have govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. The top one, govern, that's the one function that got introduced in 2024 with the 2.0 version. And in the second pillar, the categories pillar, each of those functions is basically split up in 1 to 4 different categories. And in the subcategories, again, a split is being made, ultimately resulting in 106 subcategories. Yeah, that's it about this slide. Then how does it correlate to resilience and more specifically to the maturity levels with regards to resilience? So both NIST 2.0 as well as resilience can be categorized or staged with 5 stages, from on the left to level 1 all the way up to the right level 5. And what happens between those levels? So at the start, when a company is assessed and being categorized to be level 1, so in the initial and partial phase, it means that the organization has limited awareness of cybersecurity risk, lacks formal processes, etc. So it's really in a fragile state. With regards to the second level, this is more with regards to developing and risk informed. So the organization is currently in the phase of developing certain standards, certain controls that need to be in place, but also identifying its risks that it should take care of, should mitigate in the end. Continuing with the level 3, this is the defined and repeatable level from a NIST 2.0 perspective. And that means that the organization was able to establish basically resilience by means of having certain policies and controls in place, which have been formally approved, documented, and implemented according to certain risk management practices. Then we have level 4, which is the managed level, managed stage. And this fosters a mature resilience, which is characterized by proactive defense, efficient response, and of course, a culture of continuous improvement across all the functions that are considered to be relevant. And the last phase, basically the best phase is the stage, I must say, sorry, is the optimized stage. And this one is it's all about being resilient. So being adaptive to all what organization has to deal with on a day-to-day basis, especially nowadays with the environment changing so rapidly. So it achieves basically adaptive resilience, enabling the organization to anticipate to threats and to withstand even novel and sophisticated attacks. So that's why we can see a really nice correlation between resilience levels at the top and maturity levels at the bottom of NIST 2.0. I think this one is for you, Elaine.
Yeah. So you might wonder, how do you link the resilience dimensions to the NIST 2.0 functions that Gijs mentioned? So on this slide, what you will see are the 6 NIST 2.0 security, cybersecurity framework functions that govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Underneath them are the resilience dimensions. For those who know the categories, part of the NIST cybersecurity framework will recognize the naming convention of the cyber resilience dimensions. That's very similar to the NIST 2.0 CSF categories. So from a government perspective, you've got your governing structure. Assurance is not really a category part of NIST. However, you still need, from an oversight perspective, you still need to have a view of where your organization's risk posture is. That needs to be reported up to senior management. People and culture, again, not a direct category in the NIST framework. However, again, because you are looking at the structure, roles and responsibilities, that is where people and culture would come into play. Supply chain, I did mention earlier, supply chain, yes, it is part of the govern function from a NIST 2.0 perspective. However, what we are seeing is supply chain actually can sit at the bottom of this because it touches all 6 functions. You still need to identify the weaknesses within your supply chain. You still need to have risk assessment. What are the services that your supplier provided? From a protection point of view, what architecture, or where do the supplier fit in with your architecture? The asset management, the identity access management, what do they have? What do they have access to? That falls within the protect function. Detection, you still need to know what incidents occurred within your supply chain. And for that reason, you need to have visibility of their incidents. You need to incorporate the incidents within your monitoring. From a response perspective, you need to collaboratively respond on incidents that were identified at the supplier. You also need to respond to those incidents along with the supplier, because if everyone does it in a siloed manner, you might take longer to respond and make sure that you recover sufficiently. From a recovery perspective, still with supply chain, business continuity and crisis scenarios, it's actually supposed to involve your suppliers within business continuity testing. It's no longer just within your own organization. Your suppliers are becoming even more critical across all the functions and the dimensions of resilience. Very quickly, not to repeat everything that's on the slide, but around identify, it's very much around your assets. What assets do you have? Are they properly captured, whether it's in a CNDB or other type of systems, risk assessments, risk identification, identifying your risk posture, all of that is within the identify function. And how do you identify risk if you can't do security testing? Because that's a nice way of identifying the weaknesses within your environment. Awareness and training is the last category within the identify function. Protect, although we indicate purely technology and infrastructure, there is resilience, identity access management, data protection, various protective categories that's within that function that is under the umbrella of technology and infrastructure from a resilience perspective. Detect, it's self-explanatory around I think detecting the incidents that has occurred. How do you monitor that, and then how do you report on that from meeting SLAs? How quickly can you detect them? Respond, again, it's your incident response. How quickly can you identify, can you respond to an attack to contain that blast radius, so that while containing it, prevent lateral movement. You also then can make sure your organization is up and running quickly, which of course means that there's an increase in resilience. Recovery, I already spoke a few times around business continuity and crisis. Most of you might know recovery as, do you have a backup? Yes, that is still important, but it's more than just a backup. What is your crisis scenario that you need to be aware of? Are you prepared? Have you tested that? Do you know who should be mobilized in the event of a crisis? It's no longer just about business continuity. Something has gone down. You need to recover, restore your backup. Yes, that is important from a pure cyber perspective. But when you bring the resilience element into the equation, if you have a crisis and you need to protect your immediate business, what is that immediate business that you need to be able to get up and running like yesterday, once you have an incident, to make sure you remain as resilient as possible? I'll hand over to Gijs for the last section.
Now we are going to zoom in on the assessment for resilience. More specifically on IT audit. So IT audits a critical role in cyber resilience. So as you can see, IT audit plays a versatile role in bolstering cyber resilience. It basically provides 3 different roles with regards to cyber resilience, both a preventive, detective, and advisory role in order to ensure a holistic and robust resilience posture. Well, let's zoom in on those 3 different roles. With regards to the preventive role, IT audit can play a significant role with regards to evaluating the design of certain controls in order to prevent certain risks to occur. So, for instance, zooming in on certain policies or certain designs of controls that in the end all build up to the cyber resilience strategy. Furthermore, it can also be assessed that that strategy is fit for purpose and is capable of preempting the threats before they materialize. Then the detective role. This is more on testing the effectiveness of the designed and implemented controls in order to determine whether there are security gaps, for instance. This can be done by means of penetration testing, vulnerability scans, testing the incident management procedure of an organization. Basically, to assess whether an organization can effectively identify and contain the threats when they occur. And then lastly, the third role, so to say, is the advisory role. And that's more zooming out that a IT auditor can be a strategic partner by recommending improvements to the organization, but more importantly, to the management of that organization. This is done by means of providing or offering independent assurance to leadership and the board. And this, in the end, hopefully will help in implementing a proactive risk management. Then again, zooming in on the 2.0 framework, the NIST cybersecurity framework, and how that is related to the internal controls, often being tested as part of an IT audit, for instance. So on the left, the framework with the functions, the 6 functions, and on the right, the 3 different categories of internal controls. So if we compare those two, so for instance, starting with the first one, the preventive controls on the right, this is all about stopping potential risks by means of, for instance, implementing passwords, setting up MFA in order for users to authenticate to a system. Well, this can all be linked to the first three functions of the NIST cybersecurity framework by means of certain governance, having certain policies in place, identify, so what type of risk do I need to mitigate, and then accordingly protect, what kind of measures do I need to implement, for instance MFA, in order to address that risk. Secondly, we do have the detective control. Well, on the left hand side there is also the function detect, therefore there's a significant correlation, so to say, but the detective controls are more on, okay, we have controls implemented, let's see if they operate as designed. So testing certain alert management, certain mechanisms in place in order to detect anomalies. And then the third category are more the corrective controls. So that's the testing the process of actions in order to rectify certain errors. Well, zooming in on the framework, this can be found in the respond and recover functions of the framework. So overall, this is the relation between the company's internal controls and the NIST cybersecurity framework. Then the approach for the assessment. This overview, this sort of overview indeed provides us with a good understanding of how an IT audit is performed. So at the top, a certain assurance or audit object is being identified. So what do we want to audit? What do we want to assess? What do we want to test with regards to resilience of an organization? Examples could be an ERP system, a data warehouse, certain network layer, whatever you can think of. Accordingly, the risks are being identified with regards to that object. So for instance, when zooming in on a certain ERP system, we do have a risk with regards to unauthorized access, unauthorized changes being made to that system, or for instance, inaccurate and incomplete backups being made. In order to address those risks, mitigate those risks, certain control objectives are being formulated. For instance, only authorized users have access, only authorized changes are being implemented, etc. In order to achieve those control objectives, certain control activities need to be defined and implemented. Examples of control activities in order to achieve those control objectives are testing authentication, going back to the MFA part, for instance, how users authenticate to a certain system is by means of single sign-on, by means of multi-factor authentication, passwordless authentication, whatever you can think of. But also access approval. So how is a user being granted access to a certain system? Can it also be done? Can it only be done by means of a certain approval that is enforced in a certain workflow, for instance? Zooming in on the authorized changes, a control activity could be that every change being implemented to a certain system is tested and approved before being implemented. Lastly, zooming in on the backups, we can look at, for instance, the configuration with regards to the backups. Does it only entail incremental backups, full backups, weekly, daily, real time, whatever you can think of? But also the monitoring. What happens in case a backup fails? How is that being managed by the organization that is being audited? And then on the right-hand side, the characteristics of a control activity. So how do you formulate a certain control activity? We need to think of the 5 W's as well as the H, the how. So who, what, when, why, and where. and how. So these are all characteristics that need to be incorporated in the control activities in order to be effectively tested by an auditor, for instance. So again, zooming out, this provides a nice overview of an IT audit that can be performed on, again, an ERP system, a data warehouse, whatever you can think of. Then the last slide for today, the lines of defense. I was talking in a previous slide about the approach that can be taken as part of an IT audit. This is all talking about it from a fourth line of defense, so an external auditor. An IT audit can also be performed from an internal audit perspective, so the third line of defense. But before those two lines of defense, there are also the first and second line of defense. So zooming in on those two lines, the first line of defense is basically the business and IT. So they are the line management performing all those controls that we previously talked about. So they need to perform the day-to-day tasks. They are the owners of the risk, so they need to take ownership of that, and they need to mitigate the risks directly. Secondly, we do have the risk management function within an organization. This function tries to help the first line by means of identifying and accordingly mitigating the risk that they do think are relevant to be mitigated. So they can help by means of performing certain controls, guiding certain controls, whatever you can think of in order to allow the business and IT line management for effectively forming those controls that are considered to be relevant. Going back to the third and fourth line, these two lines provide the organization with an objective overview of how the organization is able to address all the risks that are considered to be relevant. So basically providing an objective overview of controls to be tested and ultimately resulting in certain control objectives to be achieved, and therefore mitigating certain risks that have been identified to be relevant as part of the audit or assurance object. This can also be translated into auditing resilience. So how is an organization being able to apply that fifth level of maturity, the adaptive resilience stage? Below an example of a control, how that should be formulated, including those control characteristics. I think this is it. Elaine, anything to add to this?
No, not at the moment. So if you maybe move on, what we can do is have a look at any questions that that you might have. You're on mute. Is this you on mute?
Thank you. I was thanking you for the exciting lecture and saying that it was very different than the one we had earlier today. So I'm sure that the students are having an interesting learning curve today. I've compiled a couple of questions, so I will read them out and you can see who is most interested to answer them. So one about what challenges do organizations face when moving from defined or repeatable to managed within the NIST maturity model?
Well, maybe to first answer, what a lot of the clients that we have think they're at level 5, which is adaptive. So for them to sometimes get that little bit of a shock around they at a level 3 defined to get to a level 4, we do see they integrate a lot of their systems and processes. They become more automated. so that they can have that proactive defense in place using AI to help them in correlations, patterns, and look for all of that. There's a lot of really good technologies out there that our clients are using that will help them with that proactive defense. And that is what they usually would put in place to move from that defined, repeatable, which most clients really are realistically, to get into that more managed type of environment.
Maybe to add to that, going back to the last slide I was presenting with the 4 lines of defense, I think you really need a second line of defense, so the risk management function within an organization, in order to get to the managed level, because this is all about zooming out and being able to basically improve certain controls that are not effectively being operated, basically. So level 3 is about defined and repeatable. So as Jelene mentioned, almost every organization has certain controls being implemented, designed and implemented, and being operated. But then zooming out and making sure that it's all managed and making sense, basically, that's when the second line of defense comes in place.
All right, great. And I think the next question builds on this a little bit. So it's talking about how progressing through these different maturity levels that you're speaking about, how does that directly improve an organization's ability to anticipate and respond evolving cyber threats?
So if you recall the various NIST functions, part of it is identification. It's one of the functions. So when you look at NIST from a maturity perspective, the maturity is also applied across all 6 functions. And the important one, well, not the important one of them is the identify function, in that you are supposed to use threat intelligence. You're supposed to take the threat intelligence, apply it when you drive when you perform your security testing. It should influence where and how you should perform that security testing. That is how you then can identify what are truly where are your weaknesses in your environment, where do you need to protect, so that you don't overprotect one specific area and underprotect another. So all the different functions has a threat and a knock-on implication on the next function. By looking across your functions, you will understand where your true maturity lies. So it's not just one specific small component or one subcategory or category that will influence your or drive your maturity. It's all 6 functions. And usually what we see with our clients, what work best is have that risk-based, threat-led type of approach that will drive where you need to protect, how do you identify, how do you detect your use cases that you have to have in your monitoring. How do you have the right use cases to identify what might be a threat to your organization?
All right, and then building on this more, so you spoke about all these different dimensions. And for the clients or organizations that you advise to, which of those dimensions is commonly most neglected? And what is maybe the impact of this on their ability to recover from or protect themselves from cyber attacks?
I think what we see with our clients, they tend to have basics in place. It is, I think, supply chain is becoming quite topical. And the example that I gave when I spoke about supply chain as a dimension, yet it spans across all the different NIST functions. I think that is the one part organizations tend to neglect, to look at it across all the NIST functions. And by neglecting that, when I say they do the bare minimum, if you think of asset management, yes, they all have a CMDB. They all know what assets they have. Do they know the relationship of those assets? Do they know the dependencies of those assets? Do they know what are the value streams? What is the criticality of the services? Linking it, I think it's the interaction and integration between all the different dimensions and functions and how it influences the next one. That's not done well. So looking at it on a isolated fashion, I would say they do that fairly well. The implication of one on the next. So for example, if you don't know what the interdependencies of your assets and services are, how can you do business continuity? How can you test your business continuity? Because you don't even know what system is dependent on the next. When you do, if you can't test it, you don't know where your weaknesses are. You can't protect properly if you don't know where your weaknesses are. So the interaction between all the dimensions and of course then the functions is what we see sometimes are a bit lacking.
Okay, so it's the interaction that's very important. We also got a question about the specific interactions. One was curious about how specifically the detect, respond, and recover functions work together in the NIST framework to minimize incident impact.
You need to know something is going on. Of course, you can have thousands and thousands of alerts. What is a true incident? Of course, you need to classify the criticality of your incident. Knowing the incident is there, how do you respond on it? How quickly is your turnaround to respond? Who should respond? And then now that you are ready to respond, what is your response going to look like? How do you mobilize? If it is a major critical event, like your whole environment is down, ransomware attack has happened, where do you start? Your business is shut down. Where do you start? What part of your business is deemed the most critical from a business continuity perspective to bring up first? So you know what something is wrong because your environment is down. So detection was really easy in that fashion. Responding to respond to it, mobilize everyone. But how do you recover? So they're all interlinked again, and it also doesn't stand alone. You need to know where it what was the controls that's not in place, so that you also now need to go fix those controls so that it doesn't happen again. And do you apply it across your whole estate or not? So what is your estate looking like? So we move now back into the NIST functions, and you will see my passion lie with identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, slightly less on the governance. However, it is also an important function to have, because if you don't have the support from your senior and your board even, you don't have a cyber security culture.
All right, so then if we can go back to the dimensions for the next question. We've gotten a few questions about how companies can move and improve in from one NIST to NIST 2.0, and how do they implement these things specifically in the context of budget limitations. So one of the questions we have is, but how do organizations typically prioritize which dimensions to invest in first, especially when these budgets are limited?
What's your risk appetite? What will be asked. What are your threat exposure? What is based on your threat intelligence? What is it that you are concerned about? Once you know what you're concerned about, you know what you need to protect. What type of assets do you have? If you're the type of organization that just have internal assets, no suppliers, no external internet-facing any applications, it becomes a very different answer than if you are just internet-facing. You only have suppliers. I mean, for those in the Netherlands, what we've heard in the consumer space, they didn't want to invest because what's cyber, we consumer, we in the cheese manufacturing, and then the guys who get the milk going for the cheese to be manufactured, they had issues. Their environment came down, so there was no milk being provided for the cheese to be manufactured, and business was standing still. So it depends what's critical to your business. What do you want to protect in your business? And that's why, again, your asset classification is important. What are the threats that you are concerned about, and how do you protect yourself against those threats? Once you know that, you will know where to invest to have the right protection to keep your business up and running and resilient.
Okay, and then we also have a couple of questions about an obvious theme, the elephant in the room when it comes to cyber and tech development recently, namely AI. So does AI and do AI-driven systems make it harder or easier for organizations to reach a higher resilience maturity levels?
Well, you still have AI as an enabler to help you to identify what's going on in your environment for patterns, correlations, all of that. And of course, then AI being used as the threat and the attack. So we are still seeing a lot of, specifically in the financial industry, where clients are still hesitant to use AI. However, they will use it from a detection and protection point of view. I think as much as AI is top of mind, there's still a big hesitation to use it. And of course, new AI Act that's also coming out, that might make things a bit more interesting. But we do see a bit of a hesitation at clients using AI within their environment. So yeah.
All right, and then we've also seen a couple of comments about the enthusiasm for your organization. So people are saying that they cannot wait or really would love to work for Deloitte. So maybe a few insights about some career insights would be really, really helpful for our students to finish off with that.
I think I'll leave IT audit and anything assurance to Gijs for now. So maybe if you can answer that, then I'll answer the cyber.
Yeah, so Isis, could you please mention the question again? I missed the last part.
Well, the basic one was, what does a day-to-day look like for you guys? But I think that that's a bit difficult to answer. But there were some questions about certain certifications or how generally it is to develop into a career like yours.
Oh, okay, that's a really good question. Indeed, day-to-day changes over time, I would say. Nowadays it's the same. But in the end, I would say when we have new colleagues joining our department, I always mention a few things that you should consider when starting your career at Deloitte. And one of them is being eager to learn every day, especially in the nowadays with AI and all the new technologies that are coming up. The things that I learned in the past during my masters might not even be applicable anymore. So it's crazy nowadays. So we need to be eager to learn every day. In addition to that, I would say taking ownership of what you are responsible for, and making sure that you know what tasks are being given to you, what's the status on that, how do you are going to tackle that, how do you going to report on that to your peers, to your managers, whatever. It's all about taking ownership and being eager to learn. I think those two aspects are really the aspects I'm looking for in a junior colleague. Not sure what your team looks like, Elaine.
So I was going to say, how long is a piece of string? You saw all the dimensions, you saw the nest. That's just scratching the surface. I think what's really nice around cyber is the answers aren't all there. It's all about unpacking the problem statement, want to inquire, do your research, know what the various regulations are saying, work with your colleagues, collaborate, because there is somebody somewhere in Deloitte that knows the answer, or not necessarily know the answer, but has seen something similar. And that's what I really like about Deloitte. It's the wealth of knowledge and experience, and the community we have, whether it is in the IT audit space, whether it's in cyber, or regulations, or Deloitte is massive when it comes to the structure of it. Somebody has seen it somewhere. How do you tailor that to your problem that you're busy unpacking? And I still find I don't have cyber as a start of my career background. Actually, accounting audit, but I do find cyber keep us on our toes, or the attackers rather keep us on our toes. So for that reason, I do find it to be a very interesting space. But if you're looking for the safer type of career paths where you don't need to learn a lot, you don't need to think a lot, then cyber is not for you. If you have that, what's next? Why is this happening? How can I protect this? It's changing by the minute. And that is what's making it very interesting.
All right. I think that those are some really fun takeaways for all of our students. So I want to thank the both of you for a super insightful collaborative lecture. There's so many more questions. Unfortunately, we can't go through them maybe another time. But thank you both so much for your time. I don't know if you have any last words.
This is my second year doing this, and I really enjoy it. So I hope everyone learned something today. I know there's maybe more questions. Also happy to provide responses to those offline if that's possible. Always happy to share. So yeah, it was really nice.
Likewise.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Then I'd like to thank
one of the students said, I wish the session was 5 hours. You got many other great comments as well. So yes, the next time, guys, prepare yourself for a 5-hour session, bring your sandwiches and your coffee.
All right.
We
I
can
would like
see.
to invite the students to stay on. We're going to do a quick Mentimeter as a wrap up from today's sessions. So we're going to go over time, but if the students want to hang around for that, we can do that. Gijs and Jelene, you're welcome to join as well, but I understand you're busy people. So I just want to thank you one more time and hopefully see you next year.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Yay, Mentimeter time.
All right. I am going to share my screen and we can get started with the Mentimeter.
Okay, so I'm posting in the chat for those of you that haven't done Menti before. If you're on your laptop or doing it on your phone, you can either scan the QR code or you can go to the
fully
following
visible?
site. Menti.com, just posted it in the chat. And here's the pin. 6582386. But once you Menti.com, if you in your browser, then you put the pin in, and that is 658-6582-3865.
Yes. All right. So I see a number of you joining. One more time, the code to log in is 6582-3865. The Mentimeter is just a fun way to wrap up today's lectures. It's not graded, it's not assigned. It's just a fun way to look back at everything that we learned today. All right, let's give it one more minute.
Yeah, lots of people still joining.
Yeah.
So if you didn't get it the first time, on your phone and you want to open the browser, if your QR code is not working, open the browser or on your laptop or computer and go to menti.com, which is, you can see up at the top there in the gray line, it says menti.com, and use the code 65823865. Yo, we're going to clip
Right,
500.
so we have almost 500 students joining. This is so nice.
You guys are awesome. So late in the day.
All right, well, if whoever was here for the last Menti, I have changed it up. Last time we could see the answers as people were voting. I've changed the settings now, so you'll only be able to see the answer once I reveal them. So you will have to think for yourself.
That's a good thing. And always remember, cybersecurity rewards people who think differently. So if you make a wrong answer and the bulk of people said something else, you had the courage to think about something differently. Second thing is we learn more from our mistakes than the stuff we do right. So just enjoy it.
Exactly. And it is anonymous. We won't be able to see your names. Nobody else will. So just do what you think is right. I think we can continue and people will still be able to get in by using the code, which I will continue to show. But we can get started with the first question, which is a word cloud. So for everybody, please share the first word that comes into mind when you think of the internet, like the question that Olaf asked us earlier today. So I'm seeing network, information, mail, access, knowledge, communication, connection.
Another world, digital community, network of networks, good one. Cybersecurity.
Ooh, I like interconnected is also a really nice one.
Very nice, yeah. This is an awesome word cloud. Let's actually save it when we're done. Browsing. So my eyes can't read the small print. I'm seeing lots of good stuff here. Social media,
Yes.
security.
A place to connect with people. Cloud connectivity, networking,
Free
data.
stuff, streaming.
Wi-Fi.
Cloud. Good. Someone put cloud there.
All right. So I think we're seeing some clear winners. The words that are popping up as the largest are the ones that are being used the most. So information, network, connection, connectivity, network of networks is one we learned today. Browsers, Google is one of the bigger ones that we're seeing now, and the World Wide Web. Okay.
I think of online shopping. No, I'm kidding.
The wonders of the internet.
Think about Uber Eats and Uber.
I'm also thinking of education, all the things that we're able to learn through the internet.
And that was actually one of the big ones in the beginning. They got knowledge there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like what we're doing now, education.
All right. I think that we have an idea of all of these great words that you guys have thrown in here, and we're going to move on to the official first question, namely, what does IP stand for in IP address? We have 4 options. The first one is Internet Protocol. Option 2 is internal processing. Option 3 is integrated platform. And option 3 is information ports. Oh, I accidentally clicked and revealed the answer. That's not good. All right, so I'll repeat the question one more time. What does IP stand for in IP address? Is that Internet Protocol, internal processing, integrated platform, or information ports? So I'm seeing about 500 responses. So let's just give it a couple more seconds. So let's reveal what does IP stand for in IP address. Most of our answers have been for Internet Protocol, which is correct. So great job, everybody. And even if you get it wrong, that's okay. It's a learning curve. This isn't something that was specifically handled in today's lecture, so that's all right.
And always remember, your IP address is how we find you on the internet.
All right. Question 2 is, what does internet governance typically refer to? Is that repairing broken computers, the rules, processes, and actors that shape how the internet works and how we use it, or designing social media platforms, or is it option 4, ethical hacking? So let's give it a couple of minutes to think about internet governance, is what we spoke about earlier today in the first lecture with Olaf.
Great question.
Okay, so I'll just repeat the question one more time. Question 2, what does internet governance typically refer to? Is that option 1, repairing broken computers? Option 2, the rules, processes, and actors that shape how the internet works? Option 3, about designing social media platforms? Or option 4, is it ethical hacking? All right, I'm going to count down from 10, and then we're going to reveal what the votes have been so far. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What does internet governance typically refer to? Most of you have voted for the second option, the rules, processes, and actors that shape how the internet works, which is the correct answer. So that was a really, really good job.
Yeah, well done.
Let's move to question 3. Why is internet access often described as important for development? Is that 1, because it can improve education, communication, and economic opportunity? Is it 2, because it makes all books unnecessary? Is it option 3, because it removes the need for schools? Or option 4, it guarantees equal wealth?
It's very small. You must perhaps just read them out again because.
Yeah, they're quite small. Okay.
Oh,
I'll read it
okay,
one more
sorry, I
time.
had the Q&A open, so it made it worse.
Yeah, but I can read it again. So for question 3, we have, why is internet access often described as important for development? Is that because option 1, it can improve education, communication, and economic opportunity? Option 2, it makes all books unnecessary. Option 3, it removes the need for schools. And option 4, it guarantees equal wealth. All right, so gonna give it just 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we've got most answers for the first option. It can improve education, communication, and economic opportunity. And that is correct. Great job, everybody. We're going to move on to question 4, which is more related to the second lecture of today. So what is the main goal of cyber resilience? Is that option 1, to prevent 100% of cyber attacks? Is that option 2, to ensure systems can withstand, recover from, and adapt to cyber incidents? Option 3, to replace the IT audit function? Or option 4, to avoid using cloud services?
This one's trickier.
Yes, it is. All right, let me repeat the question. So question 4 is, what is the main goal of cyber resilience? Is that 1, to prevent 100% of all cyber attacks? Option 2, to ensure that systems can withstand, recover from, and adapt to cyber incidents? Option 3, to replace the IT audit function? Or option 4, to avoid using cloud services? So last few seconds to answer question 4. There's a lot of you in here, so let's see what you have all voted for. Most of you have voted for option 2, to ensure systems can withstand, recover from, and adapt to cyber incidents. But the first option was also a decent answer. But the official answer is number 2. Moving on to this question, which is a different format. It's a scale question. So this is kind of just us being curious to see how confident you are that most Southern African organizations are cyber resilient today. So you can use the slider to see whether you are not at all confident or very confident. All right, so we're smack dab in the middle about how confident you all are about Southern African organizations and their cyber resilience. Let's see if it moves. All right. I see that we're not moving too much. So I think that most of you have quite a consensus on how confident you are. But it's interesting to see how this voting is turning out. Noelle, what do you think?
I would say we're on the low end of cyber resilience. So.
All right. So that matches with what most of the participants are feeling too. All right. So I think that this is what we're going to settle on. We're a little bit on the lesser side, as in we're saying that there's loads of opportunity for improvement when it comes to South African organizations and their cyber resilience. So that's also what all these lectures can contribute to, hopefully. So let's move on to the next question. Question 6 reads, which of the following is an example of a preventative control in cybersecurity? Is that reviewing audit logs after a breach, sending an incident report to management, multi-factor authentication, or restoring data from a backup? So let me repeat the question. Which of the following is an example of a preventive control in cybersecurity? Is that 1, reviewing audit logs after a breach, 2, sending an incident report to management, or option 3, multi-factor authentication, or option 4, restoring data from a backup?
Students are loving your Mentimeters, Lisa. Asking for
Yay!
more.
We will try to keep them coming this week. Oh, I accidentally pressed reveal. Yes, so I think we have one more planned for tomorrow for sure. So let's hopefully we have some time to do that tomorrow. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to reveal the answer to the question, which of the following is an example of a preventative control in cybersecurity? And most of you have voted for multi-factor authentication, which I can reveal is the correct answer. So really great job. There's obviously loads of different examples, and we hope that through today's lectures, we've been able to learn a little bit more about all of those options. But the lights are turning off for me, so that means it's the end of today's session. Thank you so much, and we'll be back tomorrow.
We will, indeed. And thank you, everyone. You were great, very great student group today. Thanks for taking part in everything with so much enthusiasm. You're nearly there. You're nearly there.
Okay.
Good. Thanks, Lisa.
All right. See you all tomorrow.
Cheers, everyone. Have a great evening.